and provide your address.
Merle Shay, Merle Shay, 28991 Highway 3, Mars, Iowa, 51031.
So, Mr. Shays, you say Mars, I say Mars. What's correct?
Capital L-E, capital M-A-R-S.
I think I've been missaying it for all these years. All right, Mr. Shay, could you please describe the current use of your property and any plans you may have for a different use in the future?
Corn soybean rotation, mostly. I had plans of a housing development because there's a natural gas line that came through to go to the ethanol plant about 16 years ago. And part of the reason I let them come through was I wanted the ethanol plant, and they agreed to let me hook on if we would start a development.
And for clarifications, what kind of, what kind of development are you talking? Residential, commercial, industrial?
Residential.
And since we're in separate locations here, when you talk about the parcel, if you could just describe like north side, south side. I feel like, so that's
okay.
Go ahead.
The west side, there's a paved road, which that's the reason for possibly going with a housing development, because everybody wants to be on a paved road. And I would put a frontage road in where my driveway is, and then there'd be a frontage road, up the hill for the housing development.
And again, Mr. Shay, just for the sake of, so we have a court reporter here that is creating a record so that we can go back and review all of these comments. So for the sake of the court reporter and that record, I'm going to refer to this maybe as, I feel like there's a major driveway that separates your land into like a north half and a south half. Would that be correct?
Yes, there's a driveway that goes back to a gravel pit.
And so maybe...
And then there's a driveway that goes to a farm place that I own.
So maybe it's...
That driveway there goes to the farm place. The other one goes to the gravel pit in the grain bin.
Okay. So maybe as we continue this conversation, I'm just going to refer to this property as a north parcel and a south parcel, and use that driveway as kind of a midpoint, if you will. Does that sound fair?
Yes.
Okay. Just so we're speaking the same language. So could you give me a general description of that property? And then I'm going to go through some things to ask about if they're on your property.
I believe it's a southwest border of Section 35, Washington Township. And then there will be a small piece on the south side of the driveway that is Section 2 of Plymouth Township.
And on that property, or on this parcel, can you please identify the buildings or any other structures?
There's a house, a garage. That's the house. There's a garage there. There's a garage to the south yet, and then a machine shed towards the east. Yes, that'd be and that's a machine shed, smaller machine shed, and then a grain bin.
And Mr. Shay, can you please describe to us, I believe you mentioned that there's a natural gas line, if I recall. Can you identify where the natural gas line is located, and then any other utilities that may be on this parcel that we're talking about this morning?
Okay, you see the terrace on the north side? Yes. Okay, if you go to the west on that terrace, west further yet, east a little bit further east, just a little bit east yet. That's about where the natural gas line runs.
And that runs the north-south direction, correct?
Yes.
And by chance, do you know the diameter of that?
And that goes, when you get to the top of the property, it goes east.
And do you know the diameter of that pipe?
It's a 4 or 6 inch.
And by chance, do you know the proposed diameter of the carbon pipeline?
When they first talked to me, it was going to be a 12 inch. The last papers I received, it'll be a 20 to 24 inch.
And any other utilities located on the property, water lines, utility lines?
There's Southern Sioux Rural Water comes in just south of that terrace. There's a phone line, internet, and electric.
The rural water line, is that an east-west, north-south?
They'll all be east-west.
Okay. And then are you on that water? Is that something you utilize?
No, I live, that building site is, but I live north of there.
So the current building site there is not your residence then?
No.
Okay. And I'm assuming then that has its own well?
No, that place is on Southern Sioux Rural Water.
Oh, it is. Okay, thank you. Any other easements, anything else we should know about with this property?
No, not that I can think of.
So you stated that gravel road that bisects this parcel goes to a quarry. Does that road, is that utilized by a third party? Does that road have an easement?
No, they do not. Well, I shouldn't say that. I bought it, and I'm guessing they probably have an easement, but they have not been there for over 20 years. And I'm sure any repairs or anything is my responsibility to it. I mean, as far as an easement, there's no easement in writing, and if supposedly when they abandon the gravel pit, they are supposed to take the road out.
So is the gravel pit still active?
And like they haven't removed any gravel for over 20 years. So I don't know. I would say no, it's not active. They said it's been mined out, but they've never been back either. So I do not know. They contacted me a couple of years ago, wanted me to sign off, but they have never done. Came back to put the ground back in original shape as it was.
How long have you owned the property?
I bought it in, I believe, the fall of '88 or the spring of '89.
And was that gravel road there when you bought the property?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any above ground facilities we should be aware of?
The electric is above ground. Comes in along the paved road and then along the south driveway. Yes.
Okay. Any bodies of water, streams, ponds, any special terrain features, timber, forest, anything of that nature?
On that part, no, but that other road goes back to the gravel pit, and yes, there's like 8 acres of water back there.
And any other feature or condition that might not be readily apparent that could affect or be affected by the proposed project?
Well, they have to cross that terrace, which they can fix that. But I've no-tilled since '89, and that even that 4 or 6 inch natural gas line. Last year I even had problems with that washing out, and so I'd hate to guess. And that was a trenched. I'd hate to guess what a trench 30 inches would be like for a big pipe. And I mean, they're talking 2 or 3 years, ground will be back to normal. That is not true. About 8 years after they put the natural gas line in, I was combining corn and made a turn. It had caved in. I broke all 4 rims on the combine when I hit the hole.
And do you recall what year that gas line was put in?
Around 93, I'm guessing. Or, well, probably 90. No, around 2000. I think the ethanol plant came in around 2003 or 2004, somewhere in that area.
Mr. Shay, have you had a conversation with the company over the easement?
Yes.
And have you made any sort of, I guess I would call it, counteroffer?
Yes.
And what has prevented you from signing the easement?
Part of it, I mean, I really don't want it, but they tell me you can't fight it, so I would sooner work something out with it than fight with them. But that building site there, the pipeline will be roughly 300 foot from the house, and I feel I'm going to have a pretty big loss of value if I'd want to sell that place. And they tell me, no, nobody cares about it. And I've talked to 2 realtors and a friend of mine who lives in West Virginia that does pipeline work. And he said, they all told me that it will affect the price considerably. Plus, they don't know how much because they've never sold a house or any building that close to a pipeline of that size.
And
and they keep telling me it's not a deadly pipeline. Well, it's as deadly as natural gas, probably worse in some ways. CO2 kills. CO2, they used to use it to gas hogs at packing plants. They just fill the room full of gas and they all die.
So did you propose any sort of alternative route?
Yes.
And where was that route?
To the east. I didn't propose it, but another guy did. Go to the east and up the other side of the road. Or my mistake, to the west. To the west on the other side of the road.
And you shared that proposal with the company?
Yes. And so did the owner of that property. But he wanted them to go to the west fence of his property.
So the
to stay away from his hog buildings.
So the owner to the west was willing to take on the pipeline?
Yes. And he also owns a property to the north. And that, he didn't want it there either. I don't know if he's settled or not.
I think that is all the questions that I have at this time. I would at this time, Mr. Taylor, I would ask if you have any questions.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Shay, I'm Wally Taylor. I represent the Sierra Club. And you're in Plymouth County, is that correct?
Yes.
The land is in Plymouth County.
Yes.
Who lives on that little farmstead that's kind of in the middle of your property?
My niece.
Does she help with the farm work, or does she have some other job?
She has another job.
Okay. How long has she lived there?
Oh, since about 92, 93.
Okay. Does she have a family there?
Her husband, the daughter, has moved away.
Okay. So you say that the gravel pit is pretty much abandoned, or at least not used at this point?
Yes.
So is there any traffic over that gravel road that would go back to the gravel quarry?
No, it hasn't been for 20 years anyway.
Okay.
It's my traffic, and that's about it.
Right. You said you had plans for a housing development. Would that be on the north part of the property?
It'd be on the north and west side.
Okay. Exactly where the pipeline is, correct?
Yes.
How firm are those plans? What I mean by that is, have you taken any steps to plan that development, or talk to people about doing the building, things like that?
I've talked to people about it. I've talked to realtors about it. I haven't decided to do any of that yet. But that was my intention. Has been for probably over 20 years.
Okay.
Or my family's intention to do that at time.
I guess I'm trying to get, and I don't want to belabor it, but I think the board probably wants to know if this is just sort of a hypothetical speculation that you're going to do this, or do you really have firm plans to do it?
I do have firm plans to do it, but I have another piece to the south. I'd maybe do that one first to see how things go.
Okay. To the south, where would that be?
You got to go about half a mile south, half to 3/4 of a mile south of there.
Oh, so it's a totally separate parcel.
Yes, well, right there. That parcel there.
Okay.
Right in there. Yes. Because you're on a paved road, and you're less than 2 miles from the city of Merle.
Okay. And it looks like there's quite a bit of development between those two parcels.
The ethanol plant.
Oh, that's the ethanol plant. Okay. And do you sell your corn there?
I do.
Have you heard that the ethanol industry claims that this pipeline is necessary to keep the ethanol industry going?
I've heard that, but do not believe that.
Okay, why don't you believe that?
Because if that was the case, the ethanol plants would have been gone by now. And how many years are they going to be here? We're looking for alternative energy. I think they'll be here quite a while, but it's not forever, I don't believe.
Okay.
And that's the problem with the pipeline. They want it forever.
In the easement, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. You mentioned that you were combining one time over the existing natural gas pipeline. Can you give us some more detail about what happened there?
I was probably had 3/4 of a grain tank, which, you're talking 250 bushels. I was turning around. I hit the hole with the front drive. It actually busted that rim. And then cracked the other rim. And then when I was done with harvest that year, I checked the rear rims, and they were cracked. So I had replaced, in that fall, all 4 rims on that combine.
So the ground kind of caved in, or what?
Yes, it caved in. There's probably about a 3-foot hole there. 3-foot deep hole.
And you think that's what would happen, perhaps, if the CO2 pipeline is put in?
I'm sure it will. When you disturb the ground and you fill it back in, that's always going to happen.
So do you have concerns that if the Summit pipeline is put in, that that's going to impact your soil fertility and your crop yield?
Yes.
Why?
Like I said, when you disturb the ground, and then that's pretty good hill there. I no-till it. They disturb it. There will be no humus left in that area. That all your trash will be disturbed. And if we have any rain amounts above normal, it will wash considerably.
And does the fact that you no-till present any special concerns about the pipeline?
No special concerns other than it's a problem for me. Because when you disc it, then it washes worse, and that's the only way you can fill them holes in. They loosen the ground up.
And looking at the map, I can't tell for sure, but it looks like there might be some terraces.
Yes, there's one terrace there.
Is that the one just north of that gravel road?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's not a gravel road, it's just a driveway.
Okay. And it looks like the pipeline would cross that terrace?
Yes.
Do you have any concerns about how the pipeline would impact that terrace?
That's probably not a big concern. They can build that back in without too much trouble. It's the idea of the compaction on the rest of the ground.
Okay. So how would the compaction be an issue?
When you pack ground, they'll pack it so hard that nothing will grow there. And then they'll come in with a deep till or a chisel or a ripper to loosen the top back up. And when you do that on a hill like that, it washes very bad if we get rain, quite a bit of rain.
And do you have concerns about what would happen if there were a break or a rupture in the pipeline?
Yes, because you take where that building site is, it's in the bottom, and that's where the CO2 is going to go.
So the house where your niece lives is in a low-lying area?
Yes.
And why do you think that's significant?
Because CO2 is going to go to the lower point. It's going to crawl down that hill. And depending on how big a break, it's going to go a long ways. When you're talking a 20 to 24 inch line under, well, I was told a minimum of 2,200 pounds of pressure. A small crack is a big leak in that size.
And how close would the nearest emergency personnel be?
2 miles.
Oh, Where would they come from?
The town of Merle,
Okay.
which is a smaller town. The other town would be Lamar's. That would be probably 6 to 8 miles. They're both volunteer fire departments and medical departments.
Do you know if they've been trained to deal with a CO2 rupture?
I do not.
I think you said in response to one of board member Burns' questions that the landowner to your west offered to have the pipeline go through their property,
Yes.
but on the west edge of that property, correct?
Yes, because he didn't want to pass his house either. But he's on top of a hill.
Yeah.
But that still isn't a good situation.
Do you know why Summit didn't agree to do that?
I was just told by Summit that they didn't want to go quarter to a half mile out of the way.
Now, regarding the easement, what kind of things was Summit telling you to try to get you to sign an easement?
They'll do about anything you want, or tell you about anything that you want, and if you don't sign it, they'll take it by eminent domain.
Did they threaten eminent domain?
Yes.
You said you were told you couldn't fight it. Who told you that?
Different guys from Summit.
Okay.
Probably a banker.
And did Summit tell you that your land wouldn't lose any value because nobody cares about a pipeline being there?
Yes.
I think that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Do not. Oh, my apologies, Ms. Gruenhagen. Your turn.
Thank you. Mr. Shay, my
Yes.
name is Chris Gruenhagen, and I'm representing the Farm Bureau in these proceedings. And I have a few questions for you to follow up from Mr. Taylor. Did you submit any comments or objections into the record?
What do you mean?
Did you write any comments that you submitted online to the IUB Utilities Board?
No.
And
I wouldn't be on this if it wasn't for my wife. I'm not very good with the computer.
You're doing just fine. You mentioned your niece lives on the farmstead there. Do you know how far it is from the pipeline, her home?
The one, I told them to flag it one time. They must have tried to drive some lath in the ground. I stepped it off that time at roughly 300-400 foot, if that's where it was going to go.
Would the IUB staff help us out and measure that?
Yep, they're on it.
Great.
I
I believe the
where
house
they're
is
showing it, that's not where they have it marked at.
Is that the correct distance there, Mr. Shay?
If that's where they're showing it now, but that's not where they have it marked at.
What do you mean?
It was marked probably halfway in between, because where that bend in the terrace is, it was on the east side of that bend in the terrace.
Okay. What does the distance show to the house there?
That's showing 363 feet.
Thank you. And then could you go ahead and measure to the bend as well? I think that's what Mr. Shay was referencing.
No, where they showed the pipeline was going was further east than where it's laid out
Okay.
in this picture.
Okay. I understand what you're saying now. Okay, thank you. And you mentioned also earlier that the Plymouth Energy ethanol plant is immediately south of your two parcels.
Yes.
Has Plymouth Energy talked to you at all about the pipeline, or representatives of Plymouth Energy?
Yes.
And if you're willing, would you be willing to share kind of what those conversations were about?
I talked about maybe doing a land exchange with them, and we talked about that they would like it to go through, and that if we could get together on a price, I would be willing to go that route. But I haven't been able to get together with someone on a price.
So Plymouth Energy assisted with the negotiations with Summit, then? Would you characterize it
They
that way?
just talked to me about it.
And just for the record, the ethanol plant is immediately south of your parcels, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then the gravel pit you mentioned, that's on the parcel immediately to the east of your...
Yes.
And so that driveway goes to that...
Right there.
Okay.
Right there. That's it.
Okay. Thank you. Just want to make sure that the record is verbally clear here. And then you've also talked, I believe, to Board Member Burns and Mr. Taylor regarding the terrace that you have in the northwest portion of your parcel there. Do you do no-till and also have that terrace in order to maintain conservation compliance?
Yeah, I don't need it for conservation compliance, but I need it for water runoff.
Could you describe that a little more?
If you get a heavy rain, it'll wash all the way down that hill, and that's what the terrace is for.
So
I'm in compliance with, as doing no-till, I'm in compliance with the FSA and NRCS.
and why is it important to maintain conservation compliance on your property?
To take care of the property. Like the previous guy said, when you're younger, you thought you owned it. Now you just caretaker of it.
Do you or your farm tenant participate in federal farm programs?
I do.
Pardon me?
I do.
You do, okay.
I participate.
Okay. And is conservation compliance necessary in order to participate in those farm programs?
Yes.
Thank you. Is there any drainage tile on either of these two parcels?
No.
Are there any designated wetlands?
No.
The other parcels. Okay. Any other water or soil conservation structures on the parcels other than the terrace you've already described?
Other than, no-till, some nitrification deals, no.
If this pipeline permit is ultimately approved and the Summit does construct the pipeline, would you like to have access to that easement when they are not actively constructing?
What do you mean by that?
So as a part of the Exhibit H, they are proposing a 50-foot permanent easement and then a temporary construction easement. Would you like to have access to that property when they are not constructing?
I have to have access to it all the time,
Okay. Very good.
whether construction or not.
Did you receive in the mail a copy of their eminent domain request, the Exhibit H?
Yes.
Did you see on there that Plymouth Energy is an easement holder?
No. What do you mean they're an easement holder? On my property?
Yes, it's what it's,
Where do they hold an easement?
that's what I was gonna ask. Could IUB staff, please bring up PL, or the Exhibit H for PL-033? Oh. Mr. Dublinsky corrected me. I meant to say Plymouth Energy, sorry.
As far as I know, they have no easement.
And staff's looking.
So this is a copy of your, is this for the northern parcel? I can't see the number on it. Super, thank you. So this is the Exhibit H exhibit, which is the eminent domain request. And if the staff wouldn't mind scrolling up just a little bit so we can see that it says easement holder. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Southern Sioux would have an easement. Plymouth Energy, if they have an easement, you'd have to show me where it's at.
So you're not familiar with where that easement might be?
No. The only one I would know is they had an easement along the railroad, or they did not. They owned property along the railroad, and I traded some other property for that about 8 or 10 years ago. But as far as an easement, I don't know of any easement they have on that piece of property.
And so just for clarity, the railroad runs on the east side of the property, north and south?
Yeah, yes. Buy a property on both sides of the railroad.
Okay. But the parcels that they're looking at, we're requesting eminent domain over are on the west side of the railroad tracks?
Yes.
And you mentioned in the northwest corner of that northern parcel, it's a bit of a hill, I believe.
From the driveway to the north it's a pretty good slope going to the top.
And so would you expect that Summit consult with you if they wanted to change the grade of that property?
Yes.
I believe that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. Williams? I believe it's you.
Thank you. Where the terrace is located, could we have a measurement taken from the pipeline to the paved road, please? Is that 182.16?
Correct, yeah.
Sir, in terms of the natural gas pipeline, you indicated that that was next to the proposed pipeline route. Do you know how close it is to the paved road?
I do not. I would say, if you go to the edge of that terrace, it's right in that area.
Understood. So approximately maybe halfway between the pipeline route and the paved road. Would that be a fair description?
Yes.
Okay. When you said that the pipeline, the natural gas pipeline specifically, when it washes out does that mean that the pipeline is exposed, that you can see it, or does it mean that just some
No.
of the soil has been removed?
Just the topsoil has been removed, and it will follow that line down because that dirt has been disturbed.
Do you personally have to fill that back in, or do you notify the natural gas company and they come out?
I notify them, and I have always had it filled in. I'm sure they would come out and fill it, but generally when I need it filled, I need it done now.
Does that give you any concerns? I understanding that you're doing all the work to fill in the covering over the natural gas pipeline. Does that give you any concerns or affect the way that you farm in that particular area, knowing that the pipeline is there?
You're just a little extra cautious there in that area.
Especially since you've already had an experience that resulted in the destruction of your combine.
Yes.
Do you feel that that would be a similar concern, given the fact that this pipeline might be, that we're talking about here today, would be larger in diameter than the 4 to 6 inch pipeline, natural gas pipeline?
Yes.
Do you feel that there's a remedy available that's been offered to you by Summit to resolve that concern?
They said they'll take care of problems.
Well, let's talk about take care of problems. You were presented an easement agreement, as Board Member Burns had indicated when he was questioning you. Did you have an understanding of how long Summit is willing to help you out with damages related to construction of the pipeline?
No.
Okay. If I told you that crop loss was limited to 3 years following construction, would that be something within the realm of your knowledge?
Yes, they did talk about that.
All right.
Yeah, and that 3 years, like I said, I had to fix a spot in the natural gas pipeline area last spring before I could plant.
Did the natural gas, before I jump off on a different segment, did the natural gas pipeline company fix your combine when it broke?
Yes.
Do you expect Summit to do the same
Yes.
if that situation developed again?
Yes.
And do
Well, what's to say they will?
you
The
have
natural gas pipeline is a company that's going to be there because that provides heating and everything else for towns.
does that mean you have concerns that the Summit will not be there after they're done?
Yes.
I think that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Any other parties with any questions? Board Member Marks, do you have any questions? I think I had one, but I think it got answered. So, with that, Mr. Shay, I appreciate your time this morning and appreciate you getting on with us virtually and making this work. So, thank you.
Yep. Thank you.